It smells like urine, it's disgusting. Fecal matter, human waste.
I mean, it's bad out here. It is bad, and they're not doing anything about it.
I want to see it be nice. I want them to clean it up.
You look at all the garbage that's around there. I mean, it looks like a dump. Why is nobody doing anything about it? I mean, that's the question of the day.
Make no mistake, this is one of the great civil rights issues of our time.
We're human, just like you are, guys. Okay, all we're trying to do is survive.
I am not asking the city to move out this encampment and move it to somebody else's neighborhood. This has to stop.
Do you see any end in sight?
I don't. Even after COVID, they may still stay here.
What COVID-19 provided the city is another and better excuse.
Have we lost ground in the homeless crisis? Just over a year ago, we stood here on this very path in North Portland asking the question, is this the best we can do? The city's homeless problem was growing, spreading to the suburbs. There seemed to be little, if any, progress in addressing it. Little did we know it was about to get even worse. Hello, I'm Brian Wood.
And I'm Angelica Thornton. The coronavirus pushed the housing crisis into uncharted territory and more people to the brink of survival. We've spent the last year covering that lost ground and the shocking way people are living and dying in the pandemic.
We're just going to sort of gather our gear and just start wandering on over there. Here, sir, you mind carrying that one?
Just off Southeast Foster Road on a cold January morning.
The coordinator gave me a set of people to go look for this week today, and this is the one that was the most concerning to us. So I want to make sure we are able to put in a good effort to find her. A woman named Jeannie, I think.
Dr. Rob Cloutier and his team are about to discover something they've been bracing for, that they're too late.
Hello, Portland Street Medicine. Anybody in there? Can we help you? What's her name? Jeannie, right? Jeannie in there? Jeannie? Jeannie? Jeannie! Oh, but she doesn't feel very warm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure right now, but I need an extra set of hands. I think she's... Bill! I think she's dead. Yeah.
The ER doctor, 2 nurses, and a social worker with Portland Street Medicine are on their first stop of the day. They don't know much about the woman who's been living inside a tent just a few feet away from I-205, just that she may have been suffering from memory issues. They call paramedics and Portland police.
We found a dead body in one of the tents up top the hill there.
People die on Portland streets every year. It's a harsh reality these volunteers are very familiar with.
That's a rough start to the shift.
Yeah.
Let's take a little moment here.
But this has never happened on their watch.
If anything, the work only gets more important. The deep wrongness of this has been revealed again.
Yeah.
So, all right. All right, so we go?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this, team.
Do it, we got it.
Yeah, we're looking for needles and bio.
If you thought Portland wasn't doing much to deal with the homeless crisis before the pandemic, just look at what happened when the city suspended sweeps, citing health and safety reasons. The number of camps exploded, seemingly overnight. Shelters closed, and the ones that stayed open couldn't handle nearly as many people. The CDC warned Americans to social distance, stay home if you're sick. For people without a bedroom, without any rooms, there was nowhere to go, no way to quarantine. New tents popped up in parks and school playgrounds, along freeways and downtown streets. And the trash started piling up. Crews contracted by the city did pick it up more than ever before, but they couldn't keep up. It seemed to be everywhere.
was a little more than a year ago we stood here. What has happened since then? Have we lost ground?
Well, what has happened since a year ago when we first met was a global pandemic. And I really think that we can't undervalue the effect that the pandemic and then the subsequent economic downfall has had on our entire country. It means that we have a lot of work ahead of us.
So many homeless living on the streets amid the coronavirus, Multnomah County had to delay the regular point-in-time count, the one measure of how many people are actually homeless.
We've got tents, we've got garbage alongside the street. Everywhere you go, you see syringes and there's kids around, and it's a madhouse.
And not just on the streets, but on the water too.
Unfortunately, what we end up finding is a lot of debris in the water. We have drug use that occurs. We've actually had one drowning out here.
Hayden Island neighbors have a name for them.
The Pirates of the Columbia.
Why?
Because they steal anything that's not nailed down.
The pirates raid our communities, they threaten our people, they steal our property, they chase off citizens from our public waterways, and they pollute our land and our rivers. This has got to come to an end, and we need help to do it.
On the water and on the road.
Him and his girlfriend lived in it, and the toilet was the street.
Cars, RVs, trailers lining neighborhood streets.
And there's a big scar in the grass over there from leaving a pig, big fat dead pig.
They left a pig?
A big fat dead pig. Yeah, they were there for 3 months, 2 months, something like that.
And in 2020, we saw this.
Why'd you build it?
Somewhere to live. I hate tents.
That's Mikey, the man behind the largest single homeless home that cleanup crews say they've ever seen in Portland. Last fall, it took multiple days and multiple dumpsters to clear it.
What about some of these power tools I see?
I buy them because we scrap. Metal that gets thrown away and stuff, you take it to scrapyard, you get money for it.
So none of this stuff is stolen?
No.
None of it's stolen?
No, I'm not a thief.
So I want to ask you a few questions.
Whether it's theft.
Are there any injuries that you're fighting through?
Or drugs.
Drug addiction.
Okay. What's your drug of choice?
Heroin.
Okay.
Budget cuts made it even harder to police the homeless problem. The Portland Police Bureau's Neighborhood Response Team, which we featured in our first documentary in 2019, was gutted in 2020.
These are the officers that show up when you call them. These are the officers that actually find solutions to your problems. These are the officers who become a face to you and you become a face to them.
TJ Browning spent much of 2020 fighting for change, arguing that Portland's hands-off approach wasn't working. She lives near Laurelhurst Park, where we counted more than 80 tents along Southeast Oak and 37th last summer.
It smells like urine, it's disgusting. People have complained about the rats they're seeing. The park workers are picking up syringes, fecal matter, human waste.
Laurelhurst became a flashpoint in the debate over what the city should or should not be doing to manage camps during a pandemic. The city's homelessness and urban camping impact reduction program was following CDC guidance to stop the spread of COVID, pausing sweeps to help people safely shelter in place if housing wasn't available. But neighbors complained this wasn't safe for anyone.
We have early morning walkers that carry sharps containers. They own their own sharps containers, and they come in and pick up syringes when they see them.
The same conflict played out in dozens of other neighborhoods where tents and tarps went up. Complaints about homeless camps poured in at a record rate. The city counts them on the fiscal year. So in the 12 months from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, the city received 41,717 reports. Compare that to the latest numbers. In just the 7 months from July 1st, 2020 to the end of January of this year, the city has already received 31,132 reports.
It's just really bad. One of the tents exploded a couple of weeks ago. The fire engines came down and put it out. Another tent popped up the very next day, and it scared us because one of the tents had a propane tank.
By July, the policy changed and the warnings were posted. No more than 8 structures, and they have to be 12 feet apart.
But what we have now is a lot of large camps forming. They are not necessarily maintaining any physical distancing. I do think it's appropriate for us to go in and mitigate those camps.
But camps continue to grow.
So thanks so much to everyone who's out here.
In November, activists moved into Laurelhurst Park, delivering food and supplies to people who lived there, protesting an upcoming sweep.
The city's decision to sweep this camp in the middle of a devastating global pandemic, in the middle of November, just as temperatures are beginning to drop, is cruel and inhumane.
A week before Thanksgiving, more than 100 people were forced to move out. But they didn't go far, just 8 blocks away at Sunnyside Environmental School. Earlier this year, that camp was cleared, and the number of tents started growing again back at Laurelhurst.
It seems like we're playing a game of whack-a-mole. Are we just kicking the can down the road here?
In a sense, yes, we are. And until we actually have the social safety net in place, we are going to be playing a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole. There's no question about it.
There are a lot of people out there who are just at this point, to be frank, pissed off. What do you say to them, and business owners as well?
Well, what I'd say to them is we're doing the best we can. I established high goals. I said, a few months ago I wanted 300 new shelter beds. We opened 365. People said, we want you to have innovative solutions. So we opened a St. John's Village, along with our partners and other managed camps, including the 2 that we opened up for COVID.
But those are short-term solutions. And at both the Laurelhurst and Sunnyside camps, outreach workers offered people a safe place to sleep in the city's new temporary shelters, but most declined. It's a tough sell to people who don't want to follow certain rules.
I think I like living out here. I shouldn't have to be in a certain spot, I mean, everybody's a human being. We should all be on this earth. We're all allowed to be on this earth as long as we're not hurting anybody else, or,
But I'm assuming you'd rather be in a home.
No. Some of us actually don't like that.
Did you ever have imagined yourself in a situation like this?
No. Sorry, but no. Never in my life did I imagine I'd be right here like this.
Shelley Carbajal is one of the few success stories in this pandemic. Homeless and at risk of COVID-19 in a group shelter. Last summer, she was moved into this former Motel 6 in Gresham. It's one of a half-dozen motels the Joint Office of Homeless Services leased and turned into shelters because of the pandemic, creating a safe, distanced space for the especially vulnerable homeless.
I want my own little place, and maybe I could start making payments on a house in, another year or something.
We caught up with Shelley 6 months later. Now employed part-time, with a car she can call her own, she was rushing off to an interview for a full-time job.
That'd be nice. It'd be self-sufficient again, find out where my path is going, exactly, because, it's been a long, hard year.
Our goal since the beginning, since the very first outbreak in Multnomah County, has been to keep people safe and healthy and to slow the spread as much as possible.
Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury points to expanding the number of indoor shelters, including the former Greyhound station in Old Town, to handle more homeless in a safely separated way. Also opening outdoor shelter areas for tents and tiny homes, and expanding outreach services, including food and other supplies the homeless used to be able to get in shelters.
They woke up one day
and the library was closed, and the Starbucks was closed, and they couldn't come into Blanchet House anymore.
Before the pandemic, Blanchet House provided more meals than anyone else in Portland. When they figured out how to reopen under the governor's stay-home order, the numbers doubled to 2,000 meals a day.
Good morning.
Thank you.
We've seen a lot of new people that have never been on the street before.
For them, lost ground meant long lines, sometimes stretching around the corner and down several blocks through Old Town. The nonprofit quickly evolved to serve people's pandemic needs. Along with to-go meals served on site, Blanchet House is now delivering food to camps around the city.
I'll be here for lunch.
Here we go.
And providing blankets, clothing, personal care kits, and a place for people to charge their phone.
They have been on the street, exposed to the elements 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, since the middle of March. Imagine a camping trip that never ended, right? And was no longer any fun. You know, it's just horrifying to imagine what that experience has been like and what that does to somebody.
We have done some really, really great things during COVID to save people's lives. And yet we know that, I believe that the worst days are still possibly to come.
So how did COVID impact you guys here?
Well, COVID impacted us, everything about our organization and what it is we provide.
Alan Evans' organization is Helping Hands Reentry Outreach Centers, and this is its Bybee Lakes Hope Center. You probably know it as the old Wapato Jail, a symbol of political conflict in the homeless crisis. Multnomah County didn't want to turn the unused $58 million jail into a county shelter.
What this is really a testament to is a dream.
So developer Jordan Schnitzer bought it and leases it for $1 a year to Evans and his Helping Hands group.
This is what a bed area looks like.
But because of COVID-19, they can only use about a third of the beds. And the pandemic's economic impact has slowed construction.
A lot of our major donors had to go, hold on a second here, we might need to protect ourselves a little bit. We lost an estimated $1.2 million just in business donations from the momentum we were gathering almost instantly.
Despite criticism the building is too far away, about a half dozen people here found work at Columbia Sportswear's distribution center, less than a mile away. And Evans says COVID actually helped with other services because of the widespread use of Zoom and telemedicine. And more services will be coming.
We're in the middle of an expansion in this building. We have another 225 beds coming online in the next 6 months as well. And once we hit the backside of COVID, we know the need's going to be greater than we've ever experienced before in the history of the United States.
Economist John Toponia, who has studied homelessness in the Portland area, says one thing has kept that from happening so far.
What's different this time around from past recessions is just a massive federal response, unlike anything we've ever seen before. Not in the New Deal, not in the Great Recession.
In pandemic economy, things are very uncertain.
Amber Cook is like thousands of renters, able to stay in her apartment because of the moratorium on evictions for those who can't pay rent.
June, July, August, and then I doubt I'll be able to do September.
And that is squeezing landlords like Mo Farhood.
It's been like almost, this is our 6 months since March, and we can't continue forever. I mean, sooner or later we're gonna collapse.
You know, the share of households that are spending, 40, 50% more of their income on rent, and anything that destabilizes that is putting them at risk of homelessness.
And they could face a big bill when eviction moratoriums end.
Oh, absolutely.
And they probably don't have the money.
Certainly.
I think that it moved from a crisis to an emergency.
As one of Portland's newest city commissioners, Dan Ryan has one of the tougher assignments on the council, wrangling key players throughout the metro area who deal with homelessness.
So we have to start even within the city, within the county, of breaking down the silos and figuring out who's on first for what, and then how we all work together.
And then, he says, create a system that pulls it all together.
What I'm experiencing as I just jump in here is we're program rich, but system poor. So it's how do we build a system from those on the streets to stability.
Mayor Ted Wheeler says he's counting on Ryan and the rest of this new city council to prioritize homelessness, safety, and livability issues.
I get calls daily from people who say they can't access their homes, they can't access their businesses. People are concerned that ADA ramps and public right-of-ways are being blocked, parks are being impeded.
Just weeks before the 2020 election, he announced a pivot in his priorities, from long-term housing solutions to getting as many tents off public sidewalks as quickly as possible. Move people into more shelters, managed camps, and outdoor villages. Tackle the problem like FEMA handles disasters.
What COVID did is it exposed the reality that the neglect that has been shown to our mental health infrastructure, to our public health infrastructure, to our substance abuse recovery infrastructure, COVID stress tested our social safety net, and our social safety net ripped right through.
The woman who died in her tent off I-205, her name wasn't Jeannie like we thought. It was Sherry. She was 59, and she had friends and family who loved her, but lost track of her after decades of addiction and mental health issues.
Yeah, I called paramedics.
We told Sherry's daughter we were there when her mother's body was discovered. She said she was grateful Portland Street Medicine found her and not someone else.
It's not something that is unheard of, but I mean, when it actually happens on your shift, it's saddening and sort of lends some urgency to the work and the reason why we do this. Hello, Portland Street Medicine, looking for D? Hello, Portland Street Medicine? Anybody home?
Portland Street Medicine started 3 years ago with a backpack full of socks and tangerines. They've treated thousands of people since then, not just with first aid kits.
I got a few doses of ibuprofen I can give you. Would that help?
Yes, it would.
Here you go. Alrighty?
But with empathy and compassion, connecting patients to a sustainable system of care, and in many cases, a path to permanent housing.
What's your name?
Jeff.
How long you been out here?
I've been down here for just about a year now, but I've been out on the street for 3 years.
And do you have anybody you're working with at TPI to get you, or a caseworker?
But the past year has been a challenge. While the prevalence of COVID-19 has remained remarkably low among the homeless, the number of people counting on them has surged.
There's a real need to be out here. I mean, look, it's right here. It's right here in our neighborhoods. It's everywhere, and it's not getting better. We need to do more and try and get to more people.
Social worker Lexi Olson says despair is growing as the pandemic wears on. She feels like she's treading water.
Every single day that we are able to bandage someone's wound and they're not getting infected and getting something cut off, that's a success, but you don't feel it necessarily, and that's hard. There's just so much that we can't do.
And COVID only makes it worse.
How soon will people see a difference in their neighborhoods?
Well, again, I think as long as we're in this pandemic, as long as we're dealing with COVID, we're not going to see much of a difference. There really are. We're focused right now on keeping people alive.
While no one can predict when the coronavirus crisis will end, economist John Toponia says right now it is the biggest issue that could put even more people out on the street.
I can't overstate it enough. Effective implementation of this vaccine rollout is the economic ballgame right now. We do it well, we could have unemployment rates at 4% or so at the end of next year. Do it poorly and you could have unemployment rates double that or more.
Already, people who spent years hustling and scrambling to keep a roof over their heads find themselves on the edge of homelessness. and the eviction moratoriums and rent assistance won't last forever.
If that goes away and we don't have some kind of federal relief package and the dollars to keep people in their houses, we will see more people become homeless.
Looking past the COVID crisis, voters did step up in 2020 to help people who need more than just a roof over their head.
I'm a speed freak. Basically, I don't do heroin, but I like to drink. I just can't afford it. Whenever I could steal it, I will.
That experience is all too familiar to City Commissioner Dan Ryan. His homeless brother died on Portland streets. He says the Here Together measure, 26210, that Metro voters passed in 2020 will provide supportive services, not just beds, to help the homeless who have mental health and substance abuse problems.
However, the amount of compassion and time and therefore money it takes to move somebody like that from the streets to stability is more complex and more expensive. I think Portlanders are ready for that. And what's great about the passage of Here Together is that it actually approves of spending money on behavioral health services and shelters.
But the expected $250 million in yearly tax revenue from high-income individuals and large corporations may end up being less because of the economic impact of the pandemic, and that tax money won't be available until at least July. What can't be lost in the cloud of COVID and its economic fallout is what the majority of experts agree is at the root of homelessness in the Portland area now and moving forward: the lack of affordable housing.
Take a step in my shoes. I mean, I didn't deserve what I didn't do anything to deserve to be out here, but yet, due to high prices of housing, I can't afford it.
It never gets solved until we start to get our handle on the overarching problem. And the overarching problem, as we discussed a year and a half ago, is we are not building enough housing in this region.
The fastest growing group of people that we're encountering are 50, 55 and older.
Especially vulnerable.
Never slept in a car in their life, never been in a food line, never thought home was going to be an RV on the side of the road. We know that this is the tip of a very big iceberg.
Homer Williams, who is behind the River Navigation Center for the Homeless, is one of Portland's most prominent developers.
Are we building enough housing?
We're building the wrong kind of housing. We really have to focus on housing, workforce housing.
How do you mean workforce housing?
Housing that people can afford. And if you got a minimum wage of $15,000,
you can't afford much.
No. Yeah, you can afford the RV or a tent.
Voters did approve 2 big bonds to build affordable housing, and the city of Portland changed building rules to allow more density. But John Taponia says he worries because overall housing construction has been on the decline for the past year.
You know, if it were up to me, I'd put a scoreboard outside of the city hall that counted the number of housing units that were under construction on that given day, and if that number's fallen, you know, they should be concerned.
The same slow motion disaster is unfolding in Salem.
It wasn't like this the first 4 years I was out here. Since the pandemic happened, this is what it's turned into.
The struggle is on full display at Cascade Gateway Park.
I haven't had a shower in at least 5 months.
Hundreds of people like Nick spent the winter here, scrambling to stay one step ahead of floodwater contaminated with sewage.
I have nowhere else to go right now. I can't live with my dad. You know, I want to get out of here, but I can't.
It took us 30 years to get where we are. 30 years. It's going to take us 30 years to get out of this.
Jimmy Jones is the executive director of the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency, a nonprofit that manages about $50 million a year in mostly government funding. Their mission is to house as many people as they can in Marion and Polk County. He says we don't have to wait for eviction moratoriums to expire to know we're in for a housing catastrophe. It's already happening.
One of the untold parts of the great COVID story will be that we did have resources to help people who had a roof over their head. We did have resources to help people who had a bed to sleep in. We did have resources to help people who had, heat and running water. But then you go out there to Cascade Gateway and you look around and you see people suffering. You see people who are in serious states of addiction. You see people who have serious medical problems. You see people who just have lost hope. And they are dying day by day, little by little.
We don't know how many homeless people have died on Oregon streets during this pandemic. They're still being counted. Each one a tragic story that should sound the alarm against normalizing and accepting this as inevitable.
This is the richest, most powerful country in the history of the world, and the idea that we leave people in these conditions to suffer from violence, to suffer from addiction, to suffer from the elements, and in many ways untimely deaths outside is just reprehensible to those of us who do the work.
Politicians have been promising a better approach to end homelessness for years. The pandemic exposed the ugly truth. Whatever they're doing isn't really working. This is the old normal. We are just seeing it more clearly now.
So what happens when we get past the coronavirus? For our leaders, this is a critical moment in the long fight to finally fix this problem.
It's what you sign up for. That's what, if we can't be bold as leaders on this issue at this time, then we shouldn't be in office.
Can we recover lost ground when trust and empathy are in such short supply?
Everybody's hating on us. I mean, I'm like, what do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go? And nobody wants to really do anything about it.
I think that too often people who are experiencing homelessness become the target and they take the blame and the ire of our community when it's really a symbol of a failing of a moral failing and an economic failing of our entire community.
If 2020 taught us anything, it's that the road forward is unpredictable, and the fallout from this crisis within a crisis could last for years to come.
I'm optimistic we'll figure this out, but it's going to take a long time to do.
It was a terrible year. Let's hope 2021 is better.